Good evening, everybody. You're very welcome to this Music Capital Scheme information session. My name is Deirdre Moynihan. I'm the head of programs at Music Network. And the aim of this session really is to provide you with an overview of Award 1 of the Music Capital Scheme. So I'll be sharing some background information about the scheme, explaining a little bit about the online application process and how you can apply. I'll also highlight some key points of information that we feel would be useful for you to be aware of when you're considering preparing an application and when you're preparing the application itself. Now, I will be referring to the Award 1 guidelines as we go through this session. And so if you haven't already downloaded them and you might like to do so, it could be useful to see what I'm referring to and you might like to take some notes. My colleague Jess is going to put a link into the Common Stream on the Facebook Live page now, and you can download the Award 1 guidelines directly from there. This session is also being recorded. So for example, if you want to check back on something yourself, you can see the session again on our social media platforms. It'll be uploaded in the next day or two, or you might like to let someone know who has missed this session, who might find it useful, that they can access the session on our social media channels in the next day or two. And then finally, just to say, I will be covering a lot of information about Award 1 during this session, but you may have questions or you might want additional information about some of the points. So do feel free to put the questions in the comment stream as we go along or at the end of the session, and I will answer what I can at the end of the session then. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, and if you want to download the guidelines while I'm doing that, we can get started then. Okay. So as mentioned, this is the online information session for Award 1 of the Music Capital Scheme, and it's for non-professional performing groups. So the Music Capital Scheme is managed by Music Network, and it's funded by the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts, Gaeltacht, Sport and Media. So essentially the scheme is there to provide support to enable people to purchase musical instruments. You can also apply for support to restore or do a one-off repair of an instrument. So it's not just the purchase of instruments. Award 1 is for, as I said, non-professional performing groups, and you can apply for up to 75% of the cost of the instrument or the restoration. And the total funding available is 267,000 for Award 1. So, sorry, I just wanted to mention as well that it's a completely online process. You can see the link there where you can browse to on our website, and there's a lot of information about the Music Capital Scheme there, and you'll be able to submit your application from there as well. And then a key date, which I've highlighted at the bottom there, you must submit your application by 2 p.m. on Tuesday, the 25th of June. So you will be seeing that date a number of times during this session. For Award 1, there are 2 areas of priority. So organizations whose activities involve working with participants aged 65 and over, and also involve working with participants who have disabilities. These organizations will receive an element of prioritization in the assessment of the awards. Now, who can apply? So you have to be a non-professional performing group. You can be performing in any genre, so it's very open in that respect. If you look at page 1 of the guidelines, you will see a table there, which gives you a very detailed list of the types of organizations and groups that may be eligible to apply for this award. So the other thing to mention is that the organization must be based in the Republic of Ireland in order to be eligible to apply. And then the last point I just wanted to mention here is that the instruments that you apply for, they must be used for rehearsal, tuition, but also performance. Now, you would not be eligible to apply if you appear on this list. So music generation, music education partnerships aren't eligible to apply. Neither are for-profit companies, so you must be not-for-profit in order to apply. Individuals are eligible to apply to other awards. We have Award 2 and 3 of the Music Capital Scheme, which we will talk about in another session, but Award 1 is only open to organisations, and these are organisations based only in the Republic of Ireland. And finally, if you are a previous awardee who has not complied with the award conditions, so you can apply again if you've been awarded previously, but you must have complied with the award conditions. Now, why might your application be ineligible? If it's received after the deadline, that's after 2 p.m. on Tuesday, the 25th of June, it wouldn't be eligible for consideration. If it's missing any of the essential support materials, and I'll talk about the essential support materials a little later in the session, and you must submit all of the essential support materials in order for your application to be eligible. And the final thing to mention is that your application, you must comply with the award conditions in order for your application to be eligible. And again, I will cover the award conditions a little later in the session. And then finally, we come to expenditure. So items other than actual instruments themselves are eligible under this scheme. And so if you look at a table on page 2 of the guidelines, you'll see items and equipment that may be eligible or ineligible to apply for under Award 1 of the Music Capital Scheme. Now we move on to the assessment process. Sorry, the application process, excuse me. So in order to apply, you visit musicnetwork.ie and the What's On section. And on the Music Capital Scheme page, you'll find a lot of information about the scheme itself. You can download the award guidelines from there if you haven't already done that today. And then you follow a very simple process to create an account on the application portal. And once you're set up, you can start to complete your application form in stages. So you can save a draft as many times as you like and come back to it. And you can upload the materials as you go, or you may need to go and prepare some materials and you can come back each time. So you don't have to do it all in one go, which is useful to know. Again, the deadline for applications, the 25th of June. And once you submit your application, you will receive an automated confirmation email. So do check your inbox. And if it hasn't arrived in your inbox or your spam folder within a couple of minutes of submitting your application, you do need to contact Music Network at that point, because it means we haven't received your application if you do not receive the confirmation email. And you'll see our contact details in a later slide. And then the final thing to mention is that everyone will receive the results of the assessment by email in September. So again, keep an eye on your account in September and check the spam folder as well. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the application form so you know what to expect when you log on. So section 1 is very simple. There's 6 sections. Section 1 relates to contact details, very straightforward, just the lead liaison for your organization and things like that. Section 2 relates to your organization's structure and governance. So this would be, how is your organization constituted? Is it a voluntary organization, for example, or a not-for-profit charitable organization? You're asked to supply information and to list key personnel involved in your organization. For example, the chairperson, you would submit a list of the board of directors, maybe your treasurer, whoever are the key personnel in the organization. You're also asked to outline how your organization is funded. This may be in a variety of ways. Also, are you in receipt of public funding? And you would elaborate on that as well. If your organization works with children or vulnerable adults, you're asked to confirm that you have the necessary governance in place and that you're operating in line with best practice. And then in section 2, you're also asked to upload the declaration form, which you download from the Music Capital area of the Music Network website. And I'll explain a little bit more about that form in a minute. Section 3 relates to your activities and members. And so you may have core members who take part in, for example, your regular classes. You might run weekly classes or regular concerts, but you also might have a wider network that you engage with participants, for example, who might take part in a summer school or a one-off event that you're organizing. Again, you'll be asked to provide information about key artistic personnel. This could be, for example, your artistic director, your conductor, tutors, people who teach. So again, short biographies about these personnel. And it's a chance also to outline the activities that you organize. So where you rehearse, where you perform, how often the members meet, do you run workshops, performances, all of those kind of details will go into section 3. You also outline here if your organization involves engaging with people who are over the age of 65 or people with disabilities. And we did mention that organizations such as these would receive an element of prioritization during the assessment process. And then finally, you're asked to upload samples of your work and outline some artistic plans, list upcoming performances, recent performances, things like that. So it really gives a picture of what your organization does as such. Moving on to section 4, this is all about the proposed instruments for purchase. So in this section, you list the instruments or equipment that you're interested in purchasing. You're asked to upload quotations related to these instruments. And I'll speak a little bit more about that when we talk about essential support materials. You're asked in this section how you will fund the 25% that your organization will contribute to the purchase of these instruments. If you recall, you can apply for up to 75% from the Music Capital Scheme, and the remaining 25% is provided by your organization. So you're asked to outline how you will fund this. You may have the funds already in place, or else you can just demonstrate a clear plan as to how you intend to fund the remaining 25%. This might be, through concert tickets, sponsorship, savings, membership fees, things like that. You just outline how the 25% is going to be funded. You also explain or elaborate on who will use the instruments, what members of your group or your organization, what training plans you have in place, tuition for people who will be playing the instruments, for example, and what difference will these instruments make to the work of your organization. So it's a real opportunity to make a strong case for why these instruments that you intend to purchase would really impact on the positive work of your organization. Moving on to section 5, this is where you confirm that you've uploaded all of the essential support materials. So there's a checklist there just as a reminder of that. And you can also upload any optional support materials at that point, materials that you feel you would like to add because they strengthen your case or showcase something particular about your organization that you'd like to share. And then finally, section 6 is an optional section. And this is, I suppose, a research section and an opportunity for you to provide feedback to Music Network and to the department about the Music Capital Scheme. And anything you share in this section, in section 6, is completely unrelated to the assessment process. So please be as candid as you'd like, and we welcome all feedback. So that's an overview of the application form. These are just a number of ways in which you will be entering information into the application form. So very straightforward. I'm sure you've seen many of these already in 1.3, an example of a drop-down menu, radio buttons in 2.1 to select the option that describes, for example, your organization. 2.6 is an example of a radio button that will then, present you with a text box to elaborate on your answer, depending on which button you choose. And also then in 3.5, that's an example of one of those text boxes. And you'll see at the bottom, there is a word count. So limits on the word counts in those text boxes. So do keep an eye on them because you will have to go back and re-edit what you've entered if you go above those word counts. So I wanted to show you how you'll be uploading files to the application form. So everything is done through the form itself. So in 3.6 here, we have an essential support material, something you must submit. And you see there you're asked for 2 contrasting audio or video recordings. And sometimes we're asked, what do we mean by contrasting? And this may mean different things to different organizations or groups. For example, if you are an orchestra or a music ensemble, you may want to show different styles of pieces that you play, or you may want to show that you perform in different genres. So the contrast may be in that sense. Or for example, if you are an organization that offers or delivers a lot of different types of activities, you may want to showcase 2 different elements of what your organization does. So it's about just showing different aspects and putting forward the best of a representation of your organization's work. And you can see there, you just choose the file where you have it saved on your laptop or computer and upload it to the form in that way. Now below the choose file box, you can see there's a lot of text. And I just wanted to mention that as you go through the form, you will see there's a lot of tips and hints underneath the various questions. So do take the time to read these because they have some very useful reminders, maybe highlighting elements of points that are included in the guidelines, or to point to what you should upload, or maybe some hints or tips. Like you can see there, it outlines the acceptable file type. So you can upload MP3s, for example. If you wish to share a link to an online, for example, a SoundCloud or a YouTube link, you can paste the link into a Word doc, for example. You can see there the .doc file is acceptable file type. And other tips are included in there as well. For example, you'll see there it says start, stop times of relevant section to listen to. So for example, if you're submitting a link to a concert that your group has performed on YouTube and the whole concert is up there, of course, the panel won't be able to listen to the whole concert. But if you want them to listen to a piece that starts at 35 minutes and ends at 40 minutes, put in, please listen to this excerpt in the Word doc. So just point the assessors to where you want them to listen to. Another thing to mention, if you are sharing, for example, a SoundCloud link or a Vimeo or a YouTube link, make sure that it's either publicly accessible, or if a password is needed, make sure to share the password so the panel can access your recording. And then the last thing just to mention in relation to the recordings, they don't have to be professional recordings. We're often asked that. They just have to be clear so that what you're trying to showcase can be heard. So for example, be careful the background noise isn't too loud, that the music itself can be heard clearly, is clearly audible in the recording. So that's an example of how you upload materials. Then I just included 4.5, which refers to the total euro amount which your organization is requesting from the Music Capital Scheme. So just something to mention, if you are purchasing an instrument, for example, or intend to purchase an instrument from a country which has a different currency, so for example, from the UK, make sure you convert the sterling to euro before you make your calculations, because, in order to be, completely accurate, you need to calculate that you cannot request more than 75% of the euro cost from the Music Capital Scheme. And just one other thing to mention, when you are making a calculation as to what 75% of the total cost of the instruments is, convert to euro. And then, for example, if you are being offered a discount from the supplier, so for example, if you're requesting a quote for 10 violins and the supplier says, well, I will give you a 5% discount on that, you need to deduct that discount before you calculate your 75%, 25% split. And then the last thing on the form, I just wanted to show you where you can save a draft. So as I said, you can save a draft as many times as you want. And that button you see on the right there, that's down at the very end of the form. So scroll through all 6 sections. And when you're ready, keep saving a draft. And when you're completely happy with the form, click apply, and at that point you can't make any more changes. So that's the application form, and moving on to the essential support materials. So you have to submit each of the essential support materials in order for your application to be eligible. So the first item there is a list of instruments owned by the organization, if it's applicable. So if you do own instruments, you would submit a list stating the name and model of the instrument, the state of repair. So for example, is it a brand new instrument? Is it an older instrument that might be on its last legs, for want of another expression? So you upload a list of this list in section 4 of the application form. The declaration form is another essential support material. And so the declaration form, as I mentioned, you download from the Music Network website. As you can see there, 2 signatures are required. Essentially, the form outlines or confirms that you agree to adhere to the conditions of the award, and you confirm that your organization is compliant with appropriate governance and that you operate within best practice. So you sign that form, 2 members of your organization, for example, your chairperson and your treasurer, and you upload that declaration form in section 2 of the application form. And we also mentioned you'd be uploading biographies of artistic personnel. That's another essential support material, and they should contain a short summary of the relevant experience or expertise of the artistic personnel involved in your organization. And finally, we also spoke about the 2 contrasting audio-video recordings a minute ago as well. And there's one final support material, which is the mandatory number of quotations for instruments for purchase. It's really important that these quotations are submitted to demonstrate value for money, and you need to be careful that you submit the correct amount of quotations. So for example, if the overall cost of the instruments you're applying for is under 5,000, you're required to submit 2 quotations. So what that means is essentially if you were purchasing 10 violins and the cost of these collectively was, we'll say, 3,500, you need to go to 2 separate suppliers and ask them to quote for the amount 10 violins will cost. Sorry, it could vary. I'm just picking 3,500 out of thin air there, but you need to get 2 separate quotes, and they may differ. That's fine, but you need to supply the 2 quotations from different suppliers. That's the key element. If the overall cost of the instruments you're supplying or applying for is between 5,000 and 25,000, you need to approach 3 suppliers and get 3 separate quotations for the instruments. Quotations, they can be emails or letters from these instrument suppliers, or they can be website screenshots from a supplier. Just make sure that the quotation includes the details of the instrument, the make and model, for example. The details of the supplier are included, and also the cost of the instrument itself. And one last thing to mention, if in the quote shipping costs are included, you need to deduct shipping costs before you calculate the 75%, 25% split, because shipping costs are ineligible under the Music Capital Scheme. So they can't be applied for under the Music Capital Scheme. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was the optional support materials, which you'll be uploading again via the application form. You can upload up to 5 of these. Now, they could be anything that helps make your case stronger. It could be publicity material, reviews, press cuttings, adjudication sheets, for example, or confirmation of partnership funding if already secured. What that means is if you already have, for example, the 25% in place, you could submit confirmation of that as part of your optional support materials. Now, moving on to the assessment procedure. So I just wanted to highlight the selection criteria. So there are 5 equally weighted selection criteria, and the assessment panel will assess your application based on these criteria. So it's really important that you have these in mind and keep them in mind as you prepare your application. You'll see there that the first two relate to the organization itself. For example, track record of the organization and the artistic policy and plans of the organization. And we spoke about that you'll outline various information relating to both of these elements in the application form. The next three criteria relate to the instruments for purchase themselves. So the first or the third one there, demonstrated need and suitability. So why are these instruments needed for the organization's activities and their suitability for their proposed use? So just to give you an example of what this refers to, for example, if you were a brass band and you had a trumpet section and the trumpets were very old, for example, and they needed replacing. So this would be an example of demonstrated need. And then suitability for use. For example, if three of the players were very experienced players and two of the players were beginner players, you would need to select instruments that would be appropriate for the playing level. So the standard or the quality of the trumpets you might select might be different depending on the playing ability of the players. Moving on to plans for use, how the instruments will be used and cared for, and details of the tuition and support provided to players. So just to give you an example, for example, if you were a youth centre and you ran a music program and you offered young people an opportunity to come in and book instruments and play instruments in the centre, you would outline how this works. Do people book a slot? What happens with the instruments in between the time they're being used? Do participants take them home? Are they cared for by the centre? Are they locked in a secure space in the centre? That type of information would be relevant to include. Also the details of the tuition you might provide to the young people who will be using the instruments. For example, have you suitable tutors in place, people who will help them progress on the instrument? All of that would be outlined in your application. And the final criteria on their public benefit, the numbers and types of public performances in any setting. So we referred to how you'd be sharing the details of your organization's activities in the application form as well. So that would relate to that information. Now, just very quickly running through the conditions of the award, because I've touched on, I think, all of these earlier in the session, but just in order to be eligible, you would have to be compliant and adhere to all of these conditions. Your organisation, as we mentioned, must be based in the Republic of Ireland and also regularly using the instruments in the Republic of Ireland. Up to 75% of the cost will be awarded, so just be careful when you're making your calculations in relation to that. The applicant must demonstrate how the remaining 25% will be funded. The constituted organisation must be not-for-profit, voluntary or charitable. For those working with children or vulnerable adults, you must have the necessary policies and procedures in place. You must have a clear policy for instrument use and ongoing training and support of players. We referred to that as well. You must ensure the instruments are safely housed, that they're insured, and that you have plans in place to maintain and repair the instruments as applicable. Now, if you were to be awarded through the Music Capital Scheme, you must arrange drawdown of the awards. You write to Music Network within 2 weeks of being notified that you had received an award. You would provide a set of bank details for the organisation. So it's important to note that this can't be someone's personal bank account. It's an organisation bank account. If your award is over 10,000, you'll be asked for tax clearance details. And then the point, any proposed change to the instruments for purchase must be approved by Music Network in advance. This could arise, for example, if when you went to purchase the instrument, they were no longer available from that supplier and they might be suggesting something alternative. So you just come back, chat to us so we can agree that the replacement is appropriate. Now your receipts, having purchased the instruments, must be submitted to Music Network within 3 months of receiving the award. It's one thing to note is instruments cannot be purchased prior to receiving the award. So you can't apply for funding retrospectively for instruments you purchased a number of months ago. So you cannot make the purchase until the award has been received. And then the final thing to mention there in relation to receipts and payments, if the final instrument cost is lower than what you had originally anticipated, you would return part of the award. That could arise if, for example, the instrument turned out to be less expensive than when you priced it first. It doesn't always happen, of course, but it has happened on occasion. And in that case, part of the award would be returned to Music Network and would be added to the available fund for the next round of the Music Capital Scheme. All awardees submit annual reports, very simple annual reports for a period of 3 years, and are asked to acknowledge the Music Capital Scheme, Music Network, and the department for a period of 3 years as well. And then finally, just to say, and it's an obvious one, if an organisation isn't compliant with the award conditions, the award must be refunded. Hopefully that would never happen. So we've come to very close to the end of the session, just a few tips to share with you. So really take time to read the Music Capital Scheme Award 1 guidelines carefully to make sure you fully understand what's being requested. A key thing, do not assume assessors are familiar with your work. So you may be a very well-known organisation or may have been awarded through the Music Capital Scheme previously, but the assessors can only assess the materials that you submit in your application. So don't make the assumption and just submit what you feel makes the best case for your organisation. Then I mentioned earlier about reading the notes related to each question on the application form. That can be really helpful. And of course, information in the form should be clear, concise, and relevant. Again, they're all obvious points, but good to keep in mind as you prepare the application. And then, of course, get in touch with us at any stage if you have any questions at all, and we'll share some contact details as to how you can do this. A key thing, again, submit well in advance of the deadline. That's 2 p.m. on Tuesday, the 25th of June. I would just suggest that you don't wait until the day to submit, because you never know what technical difficulties might arise, or you might have a power cut, who knows what can happen. So to avoid disappointment after all the hard work you will have put in preparing your application, try and submit a couple of days in advance if you can. And of course, you know, if you're having any issues, we'll be able to help you if you're submitting further in advance than on the morning of the Music Capital Scheme deadline. So as I mentioned, please get in touch with us at any stage. You can enter questions into the Commons stream now, and I'll answer them here in this session. But, you know, you may want to mull things over, and as you read through the guidelines, you know, different queries may come to mind. So feel free to email and phone us throughout the application window on the email listed there, capitalscheme@musicnetwork.ie, and the phone number 083 095 956. If you have any queries at all at any stage. We also are offering free 1-hour Zoom seminars on a range of topics that you may find useful for your organisation. These are running during the weeks of May 20th, May 27th, June 3rd. You'll see the topics there. Some of these may have taken place or will have taken place by the time you are watching this Facebook session. So if you've missed a topic and you feel you'd really like to find out more about that topic, do get in touch with us. You can contact programsadmin@musicnetwork.ie, and we will see if we can arrange a one-to-one Zoom session with the presenter of that topic, of that Zoom seminar with you. So keep an eye out for them. You can go to the website, musicnetwork.ie, and register your interest in attending the actual seminars themselves. Or if you would like to arrange a phone session or a one-to-one Zoom after the seminars with any of the presenters, as I said, you email programsadmin@musicnetwork.ie, and we will be able to arrange that hopefully for you. So as I said, if you have any questions, please type your questions now in the stream. I'm going to stop sharing the screen in a second and see if there's any questions. no problem if you don't feel you're ready to ask any questions at this stage. We can certainly answer questions after the fact on those emails and the number that I called out earlier, and you see them again there on your screen. So again, as I said, you'll see this many times, the final deadline, have that in your mind, and there is the link to our website where you can find out, the information about the scheme and register. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and if you have any questions, I'll just stay on for a minute in case there are any questions. And as I said, if not, no problem, we can answer them at a later date as they come to mind. I suppose at this point, it's really just for me to say on behalf of Music Network and on behalf of the department that we wish you well with your application. Do check out the Zoom seminars and the one-to-one sessions. They really can be very useful and really help you as you're preparing your applications. And do get in touch with us if you have any questions at any stage. I'm just going to check in the chat if there are any questions here. I don't think there are, so I might wrap it up now. And as I said, if anything occurs, get in touch. You have the details on the screen a couple of slides ago, and we'll be delighted to chat with you. So thanks for listening. I hope you found this session helpful, and do share it with others who you feel would benefit from hearing about the Award 1 Music Capital Scheme opportunity. Thank you for listening, and best of luck with your application.